Welcome to Enter the Dragonfly. Yeah, we taking flight, you see. Brought to you by Dragonfly, Elite Academy of Integrated, Elevated, Razor-Edge Artillery, Defensive Arts and Tactics. We the top facility. We'll break down every angle that they ever bring.
Welcome to Enter the Dragonfly, brought to you by Dragonfly Academy of Integrated Defensive Arts, where we will take a deep dive each and every week into every possible way that somebody could try to kill you and everything that you can possibly do to prevent that from happening. And today I'm super stoked. I mean, every week we have a super duper guest, but this guy is like top tier. Our guest today is Randy King. He is the author of The Timeline of Self-Defense, and he is at the top of his game, at the top of our game. He tours the world and teaches people about what it's really all about. And actually, he was a great inspiration to the creation of Dragonfly Academy, and I'm sure we'll get into that. Take it away, my friend.
With your story, you had a story about this, because we've talked about this before, and I know people have heard this from before. There was the half stabbing part, and that's what I thought was so great. If you could tell that story.
Sure. Yeah. So I like to make the joke that I've been stabbed 2.5 times. There's a major one that happened I talk about in the intro of the book. Then there was a Swiss Army knife to the face. I got stabbed because I talked myself into a stabbing. You can do that. But the one that I always make the joke was a 0.5, and it was a fork. And I like to say the marketing guy in me says I want to say I got stabbed 6 times, counting each prong. But I like to make the hilariousness that a fork stabbing did happen, even though that's mostly a trope on TV. There are other people. Alan Barres has also been fork stabbed, so we have like a little community of us. But the story is pretty simple. I was working as a bouncer at a bar called the Purple Onion, and the bar was attached to a Chinese food restaurant. Same owner for the whole place. So when the restaurant shut down, the bar was open, vice versa. Whenever we would detain anybody for the police to arrest, we would use the kitchen and the restaurant to hold them until the police showed up. Also, if anybody had like alcohol poisoning or a major injury or whatever, this would be like our holding area to make sure that people could get transported to whatever support they needed. So we had a very aggressive human that we decided to throw out, but every time we tried to throw him out, he would like throw things at the windows or try to kick through something. And so normally we just kind of bum rush him out and then send him on their way. But this guy really, really, really wanted to be in the bar for some unknown reason. I don't know what it was. We never found out. But I'm sure there was some kind of connection, whether it was a lady or a drug dealer or something that he wanted to be in the bar for. So anyways, 2 of my bouncers walk him to the back, and we're in like there's like a hallway, and there's like a kitchen, and then the door to the restaurant is here. And they sit him down facing the wall right by a counter where all of the cutlery is kept. Mm-hmm. Right? So the forks and the knives and the spoons and the chopsticks for the Chinese restaurant, and like the weird soup spoons they have, or the thicker soup spoons they have. And so before we had any chance to like pay attention or figure out what's going on, I walk in, I'm like, hey, what's happening? What's going on with this guy? Because I was the head of security at the time. I wasn't the one who dragged him back. As I started asking him questions, he had his hand behind his back, and I could hear something jingling, but I didn't pay attention to the situational awareness / the gut instinct that I was having because I was very busy that night. And what people forget is that a lot of situational awareness is taught as if you're going to be perfectly aware and zoned in. That's often not the case, right? I had 3 or 4 task loads in my head of things I had to accomplish, and so I wasn't paying the proper attention to the person whom I assumed was already restrained and or dealt with. So anyways, I hear the jingling, and then all of a sudden he comes at me like this, and I throw my hands up in a defensive posture, one of those very, kind of reactionary things that happen. I went to kind of push it away. And so we call in the Filipino martial arts negative grip. So the knife coming this way, reverse grip, ice pick grip, whatever nomenclature works for your system. We had this fork in this position, and he came like this, and I put my hand up, and he stabbed me right in the arm, directly in this region. So I hit me, and the shock took over. It wasn't painful because adrenaline dump and all the things that happened. So I remember looking at it, and then I looked at the guy. I'm like, I'm going to kick. And I got the K out, and one of my bouncers tackled me immediately because I was going to kill that guy, right? So I'm going to key. And all of a sudden the guy takes me down, one of my own team members. I'm like, what are you doing? And I went to hit him. He stopped. He's like, boss. I'm like, what? He goes, cops just walked in. And I look over, and literally standing over us are 2 police officers. So my buddy stopped me from assaulting or retaliating against this person. And when I thought he was getting in my way, he was actually doing the thing that was best for my future freedom. I didn't feel like being incarcerated that night because I was
However, he was inhibiting your righteous indignation, your expression, your ability to express your righteous indignation at that moment.
That is 100% correct.
it didn't stick into your ulna. That's really lucky.
Yeah, no, I had
It didn't
back then.
penetrate the bone.
No, I was doing a lot of wrestling back then and a lot of shooting, so my forearms were a little thicker. And it's a fork, right? Depth of penetration is a major part of any kind of puncture wound. And so it got about this far in, and like even right now, like a fork wouldn't be able to get to my bone because it got me like right in the meat of it. It wasn't like it was right in the where the meat pops out. That's where it got me.
Yeah. Wow. Ow. And so he goes to jail then. And did you have your check yourself kata yet?
I didn't, but also I didn't need it because I knew exactly where the wound was, right? Like it was right here, and it didn't go deep enough. It was mostly superficial. And it's a very funny story. There was no real danger. Like I think he was going for. People say he was going for my neck. I think he was just going for what he was going for. I think he just whatever he got made him feel better. I'm sure when he was in holding, that was a story he told. And I stabbed this bouncer with a fork, so he has like his reputation is managed. He gets to do all the cool stuff that those kinds of guys like to do. And I have a funny fork stabbing story.
That's awesome. I love that. Thank you so much for sharing.
For a second, though. We're very lucky, well, fortunate, gesundheit, whatever, that the individual was not a master of the art of fork and jutsu. I always tell people, if I'm motivated enough, I can probably kill you with a paper straw. But so let's play a thought experiment, Instructor King. You have a fork. If the other individual is larger, stronger, and possibly more skilled, what are your primary targets?
Well, you're going to go, again, depth of penetration is going to be kind of my primary goal for it. So a fork, I don't think a fork is going to do enough damage to incapacitate this person. So I'm going to have to hope that I can find the quit in him, right? I like to say that everybody has quit in them. Some people just have it buried deeper. So I'd be using the fork to dig for quit. I'd be stabbing into arms, neck, face, scraping, scratching, etc., trying to get through. The forks that we had were exceptionally strong. They were like head pointy, rather, not strong, but exceptionally pointy. Most forks tend to be a bit more rounded. So all I'm going to be trying to do is just trying to put up enough damage that I want to switch the thought process, right? When I talk about self-defense, especially if you're smaller than the person or there's some kind of disparity of force, you want to shift their psychology, right? So I want them to think about what I'm doing to them, not what they want to do to me. So I'll be using that fork to really change that thought process of, oh my God, what is this crazy person doing with this fork? Because I don't think unless I lucked out and like caught and tore at a vein or artery, that I'm really going to get enough structural damage to do one of the four things I talk about, right? Which is incapacitate.
I like that. Go ahead, Chris.
I think
addendums
in the thought experiment, I guess it depends. Legal use of force, probably not using a fork. If I had to and it was going to be killing them, probably the eyeball because I don't want them to see and it's going to be so extreme they're probably going to stop.
Right. That's kind of my first thought. It's funny because I remember back in the day when you talk about the keys and using them like Wolverine, which is insane. I had a friend in Stockton who was part of a project that they called, I think I told you, I did a TikTok on it, the Spaded Heart. And they advertise it's the only self-defense handheld you can get past TSA. It's basically a keychain, but it's basically a spade and a heart that you stick between your fingers as a man. It's going to cut you as much as it's going to hurt anybody else. But with the keys, I always said, one, press against the thumb, just as a force multiplier against the eye. Sorry about that. I was against the eye or something like that. We can cut that. Did you guys hear that? Something fell?
Nope.
Oh, good. But I might try this angle here. You talk about the reverse grip, kind of almost in a schema type of grip, where I might try. The only way I'm going to go for the eye probably is to press. If I get in close enough and I can contour the body and get up into it, and then press and start at the tear duct and try to work my way across. But then I might try to get this up the nose. I mean, if we're hugging and I can get that up the nose and get my hand turned, I think I can do some pretty catastrophic stuff in the flutter of the eyelash and get it up and in. But it's just a fork. Or take the other extreme. You're talking about digging and furrowing or creating ditches. I might try to start at the thigh and get underneath that patella and use it like a can opener or bottle opener against the kneecap. Just try to get between.
I don't know, man. I don't know if you're gonna get a fork through somebody's thigh, skin, and muscle. I don't think so. And like, this is the thing, right? When we talk about
on that,
when we talk, I might be wrong. We're talking speculation. I've never stabbed anybody with a fork, only been stabbed. But when we're looking at like this, like you made a good point, Michael, which is you would find an index point and get there because the targeting with this is very small, right? Under duress, gross motor skills, the odds of you hitting proper targeting are very low unless you practice with this tool. I do think subcutaneous fat alone, like there's a bunch of layers of skin before you get to anything Like if the person's like skin and bone, maybe, but if the person has a regular amount of body fat, I don't know if you're going to even get depth of penetration of the leg enough to get to anything really severe.
Right.
I'm not saying it won't be uncomfortable. I'm not saying it's not a good idea. I'm saying that the target, like it's very much if you aim for the stars, you land on the moon, right? Like still stab in that area, but I don't think you're going to get what you're looking for. But I do think you'll find a lot of ow, 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 and you'll get some shape changes and some thought process changes.
Yeah. Some contouring, some articulation of the body that might put you in a position of advantage. Yeah, and that's all you're going to ask for. I think that, as I said, I think pressing, using it, is much more effective than trying to stab somebody with it. If all you got for it. But I'm going to try to get up your nose. If you're trying to kiss me, I'm going to try to get up your nose. I mean, I always tell my students, big actors have big eyeballs and big noses.
There's an interesting thing with this. So, you guys familiar with Mr. Bam Frank?
Yep.
So he's got this tool for law enforcement, and pain compliance is such a fickle model. That's why we don't fully trust it, because we don't know. And if he's on anything, then we're in big trouble. But Bam Frank has this thing called the Grimper. Have you guys seen it?
Yep.
So it's got some things on there that are pretty quick. I'll send you a thing on it, Michael. It's a pain compliance model. My only concern with it is it looks just like a knife, and I would be shitting myself that if somebody brought that out, especially a cop, then he was trying to stab me, because it looks like a knife. And I'm like, God. But it is basically a dull force player, and it's interesting because I've seen them use it, and I've seen him do it with Ukis too that were cops, and the cop was like, okay, maybe. It depends. There's a model there that could. There's a model that could. I always think about these things in the form of grappling, because when I've got more time to think, when I'm hooked up and I'm clenched, I've got more time to do things, and that could be possible. I've never really considered that with the fork, honestly. I always go to the John Wick with the pencil because it's so sharp that I can do something with a number 2. Or a pen. I love pens, but fork is an interesting one. So you had this
only because you got stabbed with it. Only because you've had the incident. Otherwise, you wouldn't even be considering it.
Well, yeah, that makes sense. And like, also, I don't know if that was a one-of-one situation, right? Like, he needed the force. I needed my hands to come up. He had to get it through, right? And it didn't go in. It didn't go all the way through. Like, it didn't go all the way. It was like maybe an inch or 2 inch with the prong, which is why my initial instinct is like, I got some pretty thick thighs. I don't think you're getting deep enough I think you're getting deep enough to hurt me, make me go yee, but I don't think you're gonna hook anything strong enough, right?
No, never. That's why I said, my concept would be to contour the body. Start at the thigh.
Yes, that's very smart.
Patella. If I could find the patella, if I could go move down the leg and find that kneecap, which doesn't have a whole lot. But
you're right.
Again, that's all fantasy shit, because unless they're wearing shorts, unless they're just standing there. I remember, and you probably remember this too, they used to tell us that you could break the kneecap with 14 pounds of
pressure.
Force.
Yeah,
you can if it's laying between 2 cinder blocks.
Exactly.
But aside from that shit's not going to break.
I just talked about exactly what you said, Michael, this weekend. I'm like, all this force multiplier they're not counting bone, sinew, ligament, tendon, flexibility, hydration. There's so many other factors than just the bone density, right?
And the control model too. And it's interesting. I know you guys have also all done Filipino martial arts. One of the things that we'll be going over here in Fight Science in about a week is the steak and fork knife model. And that a lot of times you see this in prison shankings where they will do an under, but they'll hook first. They'll pin, they'll grab, they'll have some type of way for leverage. And I've seen a few things too. And it's so interesting because across of all the ideas that everybody has about what they're going to pull off, some of the best that I've seen. And of course, and Kingy's got with this, and we're going to be talking about this kind of thing also in our Blade program, I'm sure. And you've got, Dracula's cape, but I've also seen a couple of these things from Kempo where they kind of just reinforce and get a double, either high or low, and try to go after not the leverage hand, but the blade hand to be able to grab. And practicing that, and this is why we always say foam brush drill, Sharpie drill, so that you can see exactly where they're like marking, because afterward it's super eye-opening everywhere you are. And I know you guys have done those too. And it's funny though, because I see this with a lot of things with knife. And we were talking about that even in Fight Science, where Ron was showing how a lot of people will have like a forward stab and they'll try to like snap it. Yeah. And we have that on snapping twig when there's nothing in his hand. But to even land that in Kempo, I would have to have so much exact, precise leverage to be able to torque it out. And especially in a flurry. And when he's able to retract in a quarter of a second, like all of these things, I'm like, okay, so maybe in grappling, and this was standing grappling, I like it with pinning stuff. So when we're actually hooked up and clenched up, a lot more options, I think, become available. But it's really, really hard when we're, pushed back at spar distance.
Well, and that's the thing too, right? You talked about the indexing hand, right? And that's, I think, one of the things that Filipino martial arts gets incorrect. They don't really talk about the indexing hand a lot. Right. Humans are paranoid creatures by nature. They're not going to do anything, especially an ambush attack. Let's say the knife isn't seen until they have that range check, that control point, right? And so we do need to understand that sometimes the problem is the blade, but most of the time the problem is the structure that's allowing the blade to do what it's going to do, right?
Yeah, exactly. That's an excellent point. What were you saying, Mike?
Let's jump back to that in a minute, but jump backwards now. Let's digress back to what you were talking about this weekend. Give us 5 or 10 minutes of that particular workshop that you were talking about.
Sure, I was in St. Louis. Sure,
Go ahead.
I was in St. Louis at the Worldwide Martial Arts Association National Camp. And I was doing parts of the seminar that I'm doing here. I'm in Minnesota right now, in Elk River. I'll be in Mounds View doing a seminar this week, in my first timeline seminar attached to the book, blah, blah, blah. And so I was doing chunks of it, and somebody was talking about like the counter assault portion and how, because the people at this place are very traditional martial artists, right? WWMAA offers anybody can join accreditation. They have like certification tests or whatever. And so it's like this amalgamation of martial arts, which is good if you understand that you're looking for the commonalities in your arts, not the differences in your arts. That's what makes self-defense work. Like every art has an arm drag of some sort. Over, under, pass. Like the reason why everybody has that is because it works. I don't care about your dragon kick. I care about the thing that everybody is doing in every system. And so we were talking about kind of like this. I really like the underhook motion. I was a wrestler, so I'm a bias to it. But I like it from a high collar tie. So if somebody gets you like a half collar tie for a stab or whatever, I like to grab that elbow, yank it across their center line and fill that space. So I'm in that, what we call the dead angle, which is beside them. It's very functional. You should play with it from a clinch. Like you just grab, you should use that underhook motion. I really like to use techniques that work in multiple areas. So this is an arm drag, but it's a head catch, but it's a whatever, just less training time. And so somebody's like, oh yeah, but you could break their elbow there. I'm like, yeah, that's kind of the gravy, but not the meal, if that makes sense. Sure, if I break their elbow, yay, but that's not the intent. The intent is I want to change their structure, find my way through a dead angle, etc. And he's like, that's exactly what came up, right? Well, I heard that it takes X amount of pressure to break this. I'm like, well, not incorrect. Exactly what Michael said. That's in a vice grip, in a lab. Bones are dry. They're not even wet. They're right. There's no muscle, no tissue, no sinew, no fat. All the shock absorbers, right? That's what ligaments and tendons do. They absorb force into the body. So the younger the human, like children basically have rubber bones, right? Because all the tendons and ligaments. But as you get older, that starts to kind of degrade, right? Mobility helps, tendon extensions help, all that sort of stuff. But there's just so many myths floating around because people take one segment of data, right? Oh, it takes 8 pounds of force to break a knee. And then they don't put any thought into it. And the conversation I like to have with people is, there's the G-Tech, it's like a stomp kick from Jeet Kune Do. You like turn your foot and then like the heel, you go in the knee. Everyone's like, oh, that's too dangerous to use. Coked up John Jones does it all the time and nobody's knee is broken. So we have to look at all the data points we have because nothing, including MMA, everybody, nothing replicates the theater of violence perfectly. Right? But we can grab data points from that. If arguably the best hand-to-hand fighter in the world, John Jones, can't stomp out somebody else's knee in the way we thought, we have to kind of throw away some of our sacred cows, right? It's time to make them into burgers. That's not going to work. It's not going to work functionally.
I like that.
That's been since the beginning. God bless, the UFC. I remember it was probably UFC 2. It might have been one where Christoph Leninger, who was a great judoka. He was a national champion, I think, judo, rather Olympic, bronze medalist, silver medalist. But so he's in there against Kenny Shamrock. And Kenny Shamrock's got him on the ground. And he's got Kenny in his guard. And he immediately starts driving that Ipponken right into the crown, right where that beautiful acupuncture doll says you will kill somebody. So
yes, right.
Strikes him there correctly. And he strikes him on this place 15, 20 times. And at some point, you can almost see the shock on his own face, saying, wow, I've been lied to.
Yeah.
And eventually, Shamrock, because, everybody was so crude back then. I always say, Hoy's Gracie, just like the 1958 Chicago Bears would get their ass kicked by the Tampa Bay Buccaneers.
Correct.
Get his ass kicked by any of the top 20 right now. But
Matt Hughes beat him.
Exactly, who taught everything, all of that, about every chart, to see it fail miserably. And of course, Shamrock just kind of ground him into the corner into the cage until he was in such a position to where he had to tap. He literally smothered him. There was no technique, no anything. But 10, 12, 15 times directly to the top of his head did absolutely nothing. Now, at this point in my life, I feel like I was pretty stupid and naive at that point. But we bought into it. We bought into it.
It's not that you were stupid. It's that you trusted your instructor and your instructor steered you wrong, right? That's not stupidity. But I like to tell people if pressure points work, you wouldn't survive a massage. You die. So like it doesn't make any sense, right? Like,
on that, the best pressure point students I've ever had were massage.
Of course they were. Yeah. And
martial arts doctors.
There is a benefit to it. And this is the thing, right? This is the problem consistently with martial arts and self-defense is they take things that work and they oversell them. Right?
Yeah.
Pressure points to me are leverage or mechanical points. They're things that I can force a bend or a twist or a reaction.
You
right?
don't play with any neurodisruptive pressure points?
Maybe I do. I'd never heard that term before, but like I do put my thumb in places uncomfortable, right? But also I'm a wrestler. I oil check people. If you don't know what that is, please Google it. But like, yeah, I will for sure. I'll for free check your prostate. I don't mind if you're fighting me. That's no problem with me. So like, it's about
what
like
you find out real quickly is 2 out of 8 people don't really mind.
yeah. If you get a sigh or a moan, you're in a little bit more trouble than you thought.
Yeah,
for
a little
sure.
bit. That's the number one defense right there. You have to moan.
Yeah, exactly.
That is right. And like you said, Randy, most the pressure points, so called, that are going to work most of the time, and that's not most of the time they're going to work, but if they're going to work, they have the best chance of working, are the articulations, are where you're taking structurally compromised areas and over compromising them. But the neurodisruption can work on a semi-compliant. That's why we all came out with the come-alongs, right? We all came out with the come-alongs. Why did come-alongs work? Because half of you didn't want to fight a cop. Half of you was going to go to jail anyway. There was a level of compliance already built into that dynamic, whereas that's not going to happen in any other kind of a unsanctioned bout, as I like to call it. We say I say unsanctioned bout. But the neurodisruptive pressure points, I don't know where they can be applied. Maybe you can throw a little insight, but I'm going to tell a story about when I used to do cop pressure point seminars. One of the first ones I would show was the temporomandibular angle.
Yeah, of course,
nerves. And so I would grab the biggest volunteer. I'd have them hold a chair with both hands as tight as they could. And I would get behind them. I'd cut the chin. I'd put my thumb back there, and I'd simply say, don't stand up unless you absolutely have to.
Yep.
And then I would zap the point, and I would shout, stand up! Just bright, sharp, and everything. And 8 out of 10 would stand up. Some of them would fight. Some of them would, struggle. But 8 out of 10 immediately would jump up. What I would explain to them, because this is what I was told, and not by one of my instructors, but by a neuroscientist. I was taught this by a student of mine who was a neurosurgeon. He said that the reason that happened is because when you hit that ganglia of nerves, it causes a disruption in the brainstem, and for a fraction of a second, anything that the brain hears in its language that is a short command, get up, let go, stand up, anything like that, back off, it will respond as if it was a post-hypnotic suggestion. It will respond as if the brain said it itself. For that fraction of a second, it can't tell the difference between something it's thinking up itself and something that's coming from the outside. But it has to be short, it has to be understandable, it has to be 2 or 3 words. And so I always taught it that way. Now, it's only anecdotal, but I have used that in our situations when you have a semi-compliant drunk who's pushing up against you, back off, stand fast. And it has worked. Your thoughts on that?
I don't know about all that, but what I do know is, to be fair, what I do know is pressure points tend to work better on, like you said, compliant and non-compliant people. I like to say there's 3 types of people: yes, no, maybe people, right? Yes, people are going to comply. Maybe people you have to show them, and no, people are not doing anything at all. The maybe people are the most dangerous because you don't know if they're going to break bad or not. This is when I'm talking defensive tactics. So I just find that like pressure points work really well on hydrated cops under no adrenaline stress, who know the technique is happening and who know what the response is supposed to look like so they can get their certificate for the course. And I also find that they work really, really well at the end of the course when those areas are very, very bruised. I've tried those areas in real life. I have not gotten the same responses unless I'm going for a mechanical advantage, right? So like if you say pressure points don't work, you're also lying. Have you ever played dead leg? That is a pressure point. Have you ever taken a cut kick to the leg from a Thai boxer? That is a pressure point. That is a deadening of the nerve. They do exist, but we're looking for mechanical compliance over pain compliance.
Hit your funny bone?
Exactly, right? But we're looking for mechanical over pain because you can't tough your way out of physics, right? You can't be high enough, you can't be strong enough to beat Newton. There's just no way around it. So if this one, for example, is kind of functional, right? But I don't care if it hurts. I just care that's a good place that I can get this structure to happen. So about post-hypnotic suggestion, I don't know. I can't speak to that. I don't want to say yay or nay. I don't know anything about that, but I've heard a lot of magic stories like that about what the response is. And that was Bruce Seidel's problem. He was selling a program, right?
Yeah.
Who?
Bruce Seidel is the guy that created PPCT, pressure point control tactics. In the 80s, he wrote a book called Sharpening a Warrior's Edge. A lot of science in there has been, it's still useful as a model, but it's been pretty disproven.
I was just going to say, I remember going through that. And the PPCT, and it was one of the first things that they said. And he said, this isn't going to work on everybody. I also remember that my 6'5", 260-pound father doing it hurt a hell of a lot more than my stepmother doing it. And they were both cops.
Shocking, yeah.
And so, it was like, so it kind of just depends, but they said, just don't. So we were having to detain people and, you would read your watch and you would circle up and then grab the meat of the hand and circle back down. But what I found it would work pretty well would be essentially rear wrist throw position, because when you've got that hand back that way and you go into the metacarpal, and I think that's kind of the difference when we're talking about between mechanical versus the pressure point. I can dig into the metacarpal and make it hurt like hell, but the actual dropping of the wrist and turning that is what's going to mechanically spin and fucking hurt, because I've just attacked the whole thing. But it is interesting, though, too. This is why we always talk about why violence of action is so important, because you need to be able to transition extremely quickly when one thing is not working to something else to be able to get enough force to be able to stop the threat. And, a lot of people will try to get to do just enough and then start getting their asses kicked because they're not doing enough.
Well, I think we get a false sample size sometimes, right? Because what a person is willing to do when fighting for their life is much different than what somebody's willing to do while participating for a certificate, right? So if I'm participating for a certificate in the class, I'm just trying to get through the class, right? I'm not fighting. I'm not putting everything on there. But somebody fighting for their life is going to have a much different response. And the problem is we're selling the results of participation for a certificate. And we're saying it's going to work on somebody fighting for their life. And those are just different levels of resiliency that we have to accommodate for.
Right. Not to mention if they're on something.
Exactly. Right. Extracurricular chemicals. They're just tough. They're just tough. They just grew up on a farm and through hay bales their whole life. Like, wrist locks are really tough on mechanics.
Super duper pissed off.
Exactly.
Think of the body as a thermometer. Once that rage level gets to about here, rip off their arm and hit them with it. They'll still fight till they bleed out.
Exactly. Yeah. And you don't know, right?
Yeah.
Pain is mitigated by adrenaline and drugs. And also just not noticing. Like, I remember putting a pressure point on somebody. He just didn't notice it was happening. So his brain couldn't give him the signal to comply, right? You don't know what they're hyper-focusing on. And so that's why, like, there's nothing wrong with pressure points. There's nothing wrong with what we're talking about, as long as they're part of a escalating strategy or tactic, not standalone.
Right. No, that's a good point. Yeah, I don't want to be where we just do this one thing. I always like to say there's nothing just in or about real violence. And because I get that all the time, I'm just going to do this. And I'm like, I might just do that followed by 4 more things. And then you might stop. My just is usually, I'm just going to get back in my car and drive away. That's what I'm just going to do. But outside of that part, we end up with like a really big problem with those. I don't know. I've also seen, and this is why it's so dependent on like what you said about this with tactics, because I always say techniques are good. Tactics are better. Violence of action is what's needed to be able to stop. And that part, depending on where we're at, because I've seen it taught, I'm sure you guys have as well, all kinds of schools. And Kempo isn't any better about this or any worse. It depends on who the hell the instructor is. I've seen Kempo guys and I'm like, are you kidding me? No, we're not doing that. And then I've seen Kempo guys that were, really good at it. And it depends.
You see more of the former. Yeah,
I've seen more of the good, but it also depends. So we threw away the entire Ed Parker firearm stuff. And so my father, but that was because he was also law enforcement. And I always asked him, why did you make me test on the Ed Parker gun stuff? And he said, so you could say you tested on the original, but we're never doing that. And I was like, really? just for that, like,
that's
one
the mentality of a lot of schools.
Yeah.
That's the mentality of a lot of places. Just do the thing in the academy you're not going to do out in the street, right? What's the start of every cop procedural show? Whatever you learned in the academy, throw that out. We're going to show you how to do it for real. It's like, well, why don't you do it there?
For
but that's government compliance. And,
that's okay. Our last guest, Kat, she ended with wanting to, next time let's talk about methodology, because that really that's the bread and butter. It started because we're talking about, it doesn't matter if you're Aikido, it doesn't matter if you're karate, kung fu, you're going to find a segment of a UFC fight where you can go, look, that's from my kata. Look, that's boxal. Look, that's mapsal. Yes and no, because you couldn't do it in the ring because of the training methodology, because of how you're coming about that particular. You talked earlier about, we call the difference between bunkai and oyo, or what I would call the difference. And, we say bunkai. What's a bunkai? Well, a bunkai is the application of a movement, or a move, the application of a move. But the oyo is the implication of the movement. And within that implication of the movement are so many applications, so many what ifs, so many inadvertent positions of advantage that you may find yourself in, But most kung fu and karate can't fight because of the methodology. Sure, I've got a thing where I crank the arm and I move there and that's right out of Shinto. But I'm not going to be able to apply it in the ring unless my training methodology was under that kind of a circumstance.
Right.
Yeah, very true.
Yeah, they call those the gifts.
Yep, exactly. Well, and reference point training, right? Like you said, I like to make fun of a lot of stuff, but the still motion, like hey, look, this is in our art. Yeah, so's elbows. That's all elbows can do, bro. Like it can only do so many things. So sure, this is your bong style, but also this is don't punch me in my face. Just because I look like I should be on the cover of Black Belt doesn't mean I intentionally did. I wasn't like accessing kung fu, right? It was just my elbow shield is here. Yeah, exactly.
That might be your trading card pose right there.
Whoa. Wow. It also could be my like new metal album cover too.
Nice. There you go.
So you tour all over the world.
Yeah.
And is it one message that you're getting out there, or are you tailoring the program for whatever people want to hear from you?
So it's generally like it. Can I say both? It's both. So yes, I have a general consensus of what I'm doing because I truly believe what I teach and how I teach it does have overreaching capacity, but there is going to be specifics. Like right now, one of my goals is I want to add like little expansion packs to the book and do, for example, like LGBTQ. These are specific things that aren't in the general book that you would need to know. So there's different things like so we talk about the monkey dance. My mentor, Rory Miller, talked about the monkey dance a lot. The monkey dance looks different in different countries because it's a cultural thing. I like to say North America has the bird. They flutter up. They're like, what's up, bro? And they come up high. Germans go low like Wolverine. It's very scary. They go, huh, and they drop their center of gravity. So like just understanding that while those are both technically monkey dances, viscerally the German one is way scarier to perceive, right? So I do try to look at the country that I'm going to, what their problems are. Like this is my biggest beef with self-defense. Like right now I'm in the US. There is a gun near me right now. Right? But when I am in Canada, like talking about gun stuff is not nearly as important because it's not as mission critical for Canadians. And honestly, unless I'm in the US, gun stuff is just like party martial arts. So you can show somebody how to do something because the odds of running into a gun is very low. So I do tailor it, but luckily a lot of this stuff is universal. There's just differences in the flavor.
Well said. That's so interesting in all the cultural differences too. I remember Kanata was talking about that. I guess Cape Flats of South Africa, conversational distance is like almost face to face, and I didn't know that. And so, what other ones have you noticed in other countries?
So, like proxemics is a big one. Like where people are comfortable standing. North Americans are spoiled with space, so we have about a 6 foot distance. That's very, very common, right? Arabic countries, Latin countries, about 4 feet. Like you said, about 2. I taught in Bulgaria. In Bulgaria, the yes and no head shake is different. I remember I was sitting in a restaurant. Me and Miller went to Bulgaria and taught in Varna. And we're at a restaurant and I was so tired. I was jet lagged. It's super hot. I'm pissed off. I'm a grumpy Gus. And the waitress comes up and I'm like, can I get some water? She went like this and then walked off. And to me, that's maybe. I'm like, maybe? Aren't you the waitress? Like, that's your job? And she comes back and I was like, okay, yes. So like, okay. And then I'm like, can I have this? And she walked off. I'm like, this is an indecisive lady. I don't know why she can't make up her mind. Later, I find out this is yes in Bulgaria.
Oh, okay.
I didn't know that. So you can travel so far that your body language reading is off because even the basic yeses and nos look different. Wow. And you should know that entering the country.
Yeah, no kidding. That would be good to have ahead of time. I'm like, huh? What is?
Yeah, exactly.
What does that mean?
Yeah, maybe. But no, it's like yes. This is yes. Yeah,
I'll think about it.
What do you mean maybe? Yeah, exactly. What other ones have I know?
Wild.
Also, like cultural norms on politeness, right? Like, so I'm a thick fella. I'm a chunky guy. I'm working on it right now. I've been doing a lot of stuff to get back in shape. But I remember I was where was that guy from? The Netherlands? And the Netherlands guy, they just say stuff matter of fact. He's like, yeah, it's very hard when you grab this much belly fat. I'm like, bro, chill out. But for him, he wasn't being mean. He was just stating a fact. I do have a lot of belly fat and it was hard, but his politeness wasn't what we expect. So even when we think about de-escalation and conflict communication, you need to know the culture, right? Some people are more upfront. Some people use guilt more. Some people use flattery more, right? And you can find these things. There's actually a really good book. I'm trying to remember the name of it. It's at home and I'm not at home. But I think it's called Where Worlds Collide. It's like a big, thick book on Amazon. And it literally talks about cultural differences and how to sell in those countries. I found that to be one of the greatest tools I've ever seen because it tells you like humor in Germany is this type. Body language is this type. So when you're creating ads and stuff, it shows you. But the marketing psychology and the threat detection psychology overlap pretty considerably. Where Worlds Collide, I believe it's called.
Well, that's awesome. Thank you for that information. Yeah, I'll have to look at that.
Of course.
That's very interesting. You know, we almost have a similar thing even inside of the U.S. here because there's a lot of differences between New Yorkers and, you know, Oklahomans and South Texans and Californians. There's societal norms. We all have the same yes and no, but but there are things that can be triggering to one group that's not necessarily to another, and a lot of that depending on where you are. So,
well, even language, like value on language, right? Like the C word is very bad here. It's cute in Australia and England, right? Like there's just differences. The Canadian accent. I am Canadian. I'm from Alberta. The Canadian accent on TV is the Ontario accent. Oh no, where we go? What a boot. That's somewhere else. That's not how I talk. My O's are funny. Don't get me wrong. But I'm in Minnesota. The O's are funny here too. But you need to pay attention to that.
No, they talk funny, don't you know?
Yeah, I love it. I love it. I think exactly. O for cute is my favorite insult. I love it. So yeah, they'll be like, "Oh, for cute," but like just paying attention. Remember the scene?
Like version of Bless Your Heart.
That's exactly what it is. Do you remember the scene from *Inglourious Basterds* where they catch the German spy because there's three like this, not like this? I have discovered these. So when the Canadian-U.S. war happens, I have your spy information ready. Okay,
thank you.
You ask them what grade they learnt addition in. Canadians will say 3rd grade. Americans will say grade 3. So just the way they put it together, like how you say grade school is different than how I say grade school. Also, good indication, washroom, bathroom. I call it a washroom.
Yeah.
Everybody here calls it a bathroom or a restroom. Right?
Yeah.
Or loo or toilet, depending where else you are, right? So there's so many different little indicators. If you pay attention and you can catch the patterns, there are different ways for you to know. You can gain a lot of information very quickly just by paying attention.
I think paying attention is the key to everything. Paying attention is the through line of your entire book.
That's 1,000% correct.
From every single point.
So I know we've talked about this on the timeline of self-defense a few times, and my favorite thing is I was just mentioning the 3 pillars because that was like my big takeaway of like, okay, this is why you have to go read this because this is like the pillars hold shit up. So like you should look at that. And then the second one I always almost talk about is the dump, and we included that in Prime too because it's a big misconception in our society that you're not going to be like, oh my god, and I think that's a good probability. But it's interesting. We got an ice bucket challenge coming up. I can't wait to do that when I get back because I'm also traveling. But other than those things, because we always talk about we always talk about that. What is your other part?
Hold. Before we do that, do you know what he means by the ice bucket challenge?
Oh yeah, I did an ice bucket challenge for ALS a little while ago. I did it with knife defense. They poured one on, then I had a bunch of attackers grab with knives.
Nice. That's awesome. Yeah, we're going to do it with firearms, and I'm going to shoot on target while I'm shaking my ass off. So the girls are super excited.
Cool. One of the good ways that we do it too is we get the ice water. We make our students put their hands in it, and then do it for 2 minutes, and then pull it out. They see
That's what I was initially going to do, and then Michael was like, no, you have to have Angie and Charisma just dunk you with water. And I'm like, they're going to love that, and I'm going to hate it. And he's like, that's exactly why you're going to say.
Instant adrenal dump. That's
smart call.
Trying to open your car door. That is jumping you at the ATM right there, and then immediately get to the okay. I'm sorry. So get back to what you wanted to.
So what is your favorite part on the timeline, other than the things we always talk about between the jump and the 3 pillars?
That's all my favorite. I don't know. That's a great question. I think like favorite might not work. I think it's what people are taking away. So it's definitely the boundaries. It's definitely the three pillars. I honestly, though, I think where I kind of knocked it out of the park was the situational awareness chapter. I think I really demystified a lot of the tactical nonsense that's out there, right? Like choke point and threat level and 3-dimensional architecture. And like, yeah, that's cool. But also like, who's there and why are they there? Right. The biggest takeaway for me was the response to honestly, my real favorite thing is the stupid little quotes in each chapter, because every other book has like Sun Tzu and like General Mao. And I'm like, here's Kermit the Frog. Here's and so I really enjoy those. The talk around the aftermath is really important too. I don't think people even still are talking enough about it because the start of the book is so strong. A lot of people are focusing mostly on that. And like even the physical skills chapter, there's not a lot of pictures, but like it gives you strategy. So my favorite part, that's such a good question. It's I don't know, man, like all these are my programs put together. Threat assessment I really like teaching, but I think my standout chapter was I have never taught or thought about situational awareness in the way that I wrote in the book before I wrote the book.
Oh wow, okay, well that's unique. Let me ask you this: do you have anything you carry?
Internal critique.
Sorry, I had 2 questions there.
Sorry. Go ahead, Michael.
So you had never really dove deep into that before you wrote the book. So the book was kind of an internal critique.
Well, no, I did dive deep into it, but I was diving deep into the same way everybody else with like tactical analogies and like literally the house that I'm in right now is one of my best friend's house on the planet, and he is a sniper. So we talk about like tactical architecture. That's cool for a sniper. That's not great for Bill cutting his lawn, right? So so it was interesting for me to boil it down. Like that's where I think why the book is so successful, because it's killing it right now. Why the book is so successful is because this is a ground level, regular speech, regular communication, chat with people to give them the ability to then have the conversation about tactical architecture, about these other things, right? So many people are trying to outdo everybody that they're losing the basics, right? The inbreeding of like next to next to next to next is like, okay, now your situation awareness chapter is like, you're basically looking for like high level 5% threats. And this is for Tracy going to the grocery store. This doesn't make a ton of sense, right? But everybody's trying to be cooler than everybody else. So for me to be like, here's just really simple. Remember who, what, when, where, why, how? Yeah, you can use that here. Now you can layer other stuff on. I think that is my favorite part.
That's an excellent point. I love that so much. We always say basics and back to basics, some of the most important lessons, and keep it simple because simple survives. That's correct. A huge, huge part of it. What I was going to ask, though, I don't know, because you're in Canada and if they have something. So here we have USCCA, something that we were super big in on Prime was about the insurance model of how there's different providers. I don't know that any of them actually do provide in Canada. Is there anything that you recommend for people there that they have anything like that at all?
There isn't anything like that. So I think like Michael was going to ask a question about what I carry personally, but there isn't, we don't have that because we don't have the liability of carrying tools on us, right? 99% of the time in Canada, there isn't a weapon. Like, so not 90% of the time. That's incorrect. The stats actually break down to 1/3, 1/3, 1/3. So yes, that was hyperbole, but I want to be clear. I don't want hyperbole, but you're right. 1/3 of all events are like choking beatings, blunt force draggings. 1/3 are knife crime. And then 1/3 is gun crime. But that gun crime is 99% criminal to criminal. Right. So, like, honestly, other than like we had a mass shooting, you got the U.S. loves to point out mass shootings in other countries. It's very funny. It's like, oh, you had one we had one this year. You've had 48 in the first 5 months, right? So
we had 3 this week.
Yeah, exactly. So, but like we had a mass shooting in that area, but there's other like vehicle-based crimes. People are going to try to kill each other. The reason why gun law works in Canada is because people are always going to try to kill each other. You can't stop that. But it's how well can they kill each other and what volume can they kill each other? And that's where the gun conversation comes in, right? Like if I'm going on a stabbing spree, I'm getting 3 or 4 people before I'm tackled. If I have an AK...
if you're motivated and they're a bunch of cowards.
Exactly, right? But if I have a gun, I have distance, I have all this other stuff. So when we're looking at the crime in Canada, there isn't a lot of liability because we do have self-defense laws despite popular belief. We are allowed to defend ourselves. We are allowed to do stuff. But culturally, it's not as common. And... So there is no market for insurance in it because it's such a rare occurrence for anybody that would buy insurance. Does that make sense?
Yeah. No, it doesn't.
We're here because law-abiding people can carry guns. You would need insurance. But the people doing crimes up there, they're not paying their insurance policy.
No, they're not.
That's not what their plan is.
That's a good
there's
point.
no market.
I like that. We ended up going with them just because they cover hands and stabbings too. But I think that's a really good point that there is a violence epidemic out there, and there's reasons why you're not walking down streets of Detroit 2:00 in the morning or 2:00 in the afternoon because it's freaking Detroit. There's some neighborhoods I would go into Chicago. There are some that I would never go into Chicago. You couldn't pay me to walk down some of those streets. And even out where I'm at now in Denver, I'm not walking down Colfax at any time of day. Some of them are.
I'm saying we're still very lucky that every murder's in the news. Like that's still newsworthy. Everyone, we're still there right now.
Yeah. I think it's in that too.
The luckier you get. I think that the reason that you say the gun laws work there is because gun laws work. When you have a society that's willing to accept that 6-7, but they,
I think this is the thing, right? There's so much of a cultural component to gun ownership here that I don't think we can throw the baby out with the bathwater, right? Like we don't have it because we weren't raised Second Amendment. You need a gun. You should like that's a gun is just something that you kind of get if you whatever you're in the army. And so I don't like, this is why I don't like when people are like, oh, you should bring more Canadian or European gun laws to the US. That's not going to work culturally. You grow up with the Constitution. You grow up with this right to bear arms. That changes the whole conversation. And everybody's already pretty armed. It's like a little bit too late, right? It's like saying you're at stage 4 cancer and you're like, well, you should eat some broccoli. Like too late for broccoli, bro. Right? Like this is, it's just very interesting because I have this conversation constantly with my friends in the US and I literally, I'm on nobody's side of the gun argument. I think both sides they have dumb parts of it. And the cultural aspect here is such a unique player.
Yeah, that's a good point. There is certainly problems.
Yeah. Get a gun expert up here. We're going to talk about that good guy with guns throwing lead back in the opposite direction, which I think is a bunch of bullshit under any kind of dynamic situation when you got kids running back and forth and people puking and screaming. But let's talk about the 1/3 knife. Bladed weapon attacks. Let's talk about you getting stabbed and not knowing about it. Like I said, the first part of the book is powerful because it's a wake-up call. A
Yeah.
complete wake-up call. If you notice, I stitched it with the story about Master Reyes, who literally defended himself, defeated the other man, went home and went to bed, died in his sleep,
Mhm.
Yep.
not
Yep.
knowing that his liver had been clipped.
Yeah.
That's insane.
Right.
Go ahead, talk about that.
Sure. I think, well, this is again, a little bit of the lies. This is a little bit of the lie sold by martial arts training, right? Is you will know the context of the engagement. You will know there's a weapon.
Yeah.
Basically, I have a couple rules for not getting stabbed by a knife, right? Number one is don't get a job where you tell the public no. You're probably going to not get stabbed by a knife, right? That's a tough one.
I love
Okay, don't sleep with people you're not allowed to sleep with. You're probably not going to get stabbed, right? Like, there's a lot of factors where, like, you don't need knife training unless you're in one of these areas where that might pop up.
Nobody
On that
needs to
note,
be at the ATM at 4 a.m.
exactly. On that note, people assume they're going to know the totality of the circumstances immediately. And this is where martial arts training fails people, right? Hey, everybody, today's knife day. Grab your knife, show the knife. We're doing knife work. In my story, when I got stabbed, the guy's knife came out late. It came out mid-fight when he was losing because he had to escalate the situation in order to start winning the engagement, right? That's why I didn't see it coming. So there might be also weapon of opportunity that pops up, right? You might just be like the fork. The fork is 100% a weapon of opportunity. That guy wasn't packing a fork, right? That wasn't his move. It's not EDC, is it spaghetti, right? It was, he had a knife behind him and he decided to stab at me and he got me good. So when we look at the knife crime, a lot of the times, and I can't say this enough, people talk themselves into stabbings. And I'm not victim blaming here, but when I got stabbed in the face, I was like, you're not going to stab me. Your hands are shaking. I watched John Wayne movies. He was like, okay. And he poked me. Like, that was it. That was the whole event. Then I beat him up. Everything was fine.
Wow,
but
you dared him.
Yes, I dared him because I was taught by
the stupidest thing I've ever heard anyone, the three of us, ever say.
Yes, exactly. But I was taught by TV that that's the move, right? You don't got the guts to stab me. You're yelling. He's like, okay. So don't paint them into a corner where you force them to stab you. So with the knife crime in Canada, a lot of it again is criminal on criminal. A lot of it is people fighting for the wrong thing, right? Like, I like to tell people, if somebody pulls a weapon on you, if somebody is showing you a weapon, the saying from the Filipino martial arts is a knife is meant to be felt, not seen, right? I love that saying because I'm trying to kill you. I'm not going to show you what I have. If I'm showing you what I have, it's a punctuation on a sentence. It's part of my request, right? Hey, give me this or else. Now, I'm not going to tell you what to fight for. You decide what you're willing to die for. You decide what you're willing to live for. I have definitely had occasions in my life where $600 in my wallet I could give away, and I've had times in my life where $600 was all the money I was going to have for a month, and I would have to fight for it. Does that make sense? So I would never tell you what to do, but a lot of people are getting stabbed over cell phones, and it's a little bit unnecessary.
Yeah, it's insane. And that's been my mantra: felt, not seen.
Unless
unless it's a Crocodile Dundee situation, you've got a deterrent.
That's exactly. And that's what I mean. And that's why if it's out, it's part of the conversation. Look at this. You don't want to mess with me. Their plan is not to stab. You can talk yourself into it. I'm sure if that guy would have kept coming, Dundee would have poked him, right? But in this situation, if it's shown very often, I just heard the saying, this is not my saying, and it comes to guns, and it's shooters aren't pointers and pointers aren't shooters. So if somebody is pulling a gun on you, I don't know if that's 100% correct, but I liked it because it rhymed a little bit, right? If somebody's pointing a gun at you, that is much different than if somebody is trying to actively shoot you, right? There's just a psychological dynamic that there should be some kind of conversation here.
Like you said, you were winning the fight. You were winning the fight. And then he had to change the dynamic, but you didn't see it. So let's go frame by frame of how did he approach you? Where was that blade coming from? And how did he attack? From the book, it seemed to me like he was trying to keep it hidden. Like he was trying to stab low and not let you know that he wasn't just punching on you.
Sure. No, I don't know if that's true. So it started with, I was sitting there flirting with a waitress. That was most of my job. Guy grabbed me by the throat, gave me 3 punches. I just threw him. I'm a big guy. Guy went over, he slammed into a truck. That's when he pulled the knife, as I talk about on the CCTV camera. Then that's when he came with the overhand hook. But because my brain had already decided this was an empty-hand encounter, it didn't register. There was no shine or gleam. And my vision was so tunneled that all I saw was like movement, right? So like, if this is the knife here, right? This is the vision that I had. So all I saw was like this motion. Right? So I'm like, oh, that's a punch. Yeah. I'll stop a punch. I'll get control. And the reason why he was stabbing me down the side isn't because he was being sneaky. It's because I had his arm pinned. And all he could do was move his elbow to try and stab me. And then that's when he got me in the leg.
Okay.
Yeah.
You inadvertently created obstruction, even though you didn't know you were immobilizing a blade.
I survived by luck. This is what I cannot stress enough. It was, if there was skill, I had the skill to control a human being, but it wasn't my knife defense training that saved me. It was more of my Muay Thai training that did. Having a clinch, getting an overhook, some wrestling, right? That's what saved me way more than like Filipino martial arts at that time.
Okay. In fact, if you had seen the knife and you might have dressed it in ways that would have been much less efficient.
Sure. I think if I would have saw the knife, I would have walked back in the bar and closed the door, to be honest. The guy was already outside. There was like, my ego was involved because there was a hot girl looking at me, right? That's who I was talking to. And that was a big factor back then for me. So I was like, I'm going to show this guy who's boss, but I'm sure if I would have saw a knife, we were outside. I could have just walked in and closed the door and we probably would have called the police. But because he pulled it out mid-encounter, I just didn't see that, right?
Yeah. Okay. So now that you've been through that, if you just had to tell somebody, how do you survive a stabbing event when you can't go back inside?
Right. Well, I think that's the thing, right? If you have to know it's a stabbing event first, then you're going to you always want a weapon for a weapon. Like empty hand versus weapon is such a silly equation. It doesn't make a lot of sense. If you can grab a stick, a chair, a bench, a table, the best knife defense I ever saw. This is not my story. It might be in the book. I'm not sure. I'm doing the audio book in August, so I'm going to reread it then. I haven't read it in a while, but my buddy Miner, he took a fire. Two guys had knives on him. He grabbed the fire extinguisher. He sprayed the first guy in the face with the fire extinguisher, and then he clunked the other guy in the head. That was the best knife defense I ever saw. There was no gunting. There was no movement. There was no back and forth tappy tappy. It was just spray smash. If they have a tool in their hand, I don't care what it is, stick, knife, gun, whip, taser. You want something in your hand too. There's just no way around that, whether it's a backpack or a jacket, just anything to keep that person away. So you're going to want to look at your improvised weapons potentially around you. If in the rare case you have to go
too long.
Yep, that's true.
It can't live too long. It has to be there. That inadvertent equalizer has to be there. And if it's not, you have to resort to plan B. And plan B
and that's the plan B is the real thing, right? Sorry, plan B is the real thing. Plan B is if you are unfortunate or unlucky enough to enter into a self-defense encounter where you are unarmed and they are armed, you want to get control of the weapon first. There's going to be two major problems. Problem number one is going to be weapon. And if that's not the problem is the frame. And if you remember that, you're good to go. So if somebody's stabbing you lead hand, you got to get control of that arm, whether it's underhook, overhook, catch, double. I teach 3 frames. I teach a long frame, a half frame, and a catcher's mitt that you can interchange in your knife defense. That will function pretty well. Or if they're using their live hand, their frame, whatever their frame looks like, if it's a half clinch or a cross the shirt or a grab, it's actually the frame that's the problem because the frame is allowing the weapon to enter. You're never going to be able to go over the frame to control the tool. So you want to go offline of the frame. That's going to give you your biggest success. So again, just kind of over as a review, if the weapon is accessible and there's no frame, the weapon is the issue. If you cannot get a weapon, another improvised weapon, if the weapon isn't there and the frame is in front, the frame is the problem, not the weapon. That's the hardest shift usually.
That is because the stabbing event is happening through that frame.
Exactly. Yes.
Coin Shakespeare. I was struck under your arm, and Tybalt says or whatever. Yeah, and we talk about grabbing that, immobilizing that weapon, whether you're grabbing the weapon hand, the weapon arm, the sleeve, whatever. I always tell people when you're striking, friction is your enemy. When you're grappling, friction is your ally. And so conversely, that means if you're trying to strike me, I'm going to try to create friction to muddle your motion, to try to keep you from granting momentum. And where I'm grappling with you, just like that overhook that you had, friction is a great enemy. Friction is what's preventing him from getting clean stabs at you. But when you're working against a bladed weapon, that friction is reduced almost instantly because you're going to start leaking. I say, if you're with a stabbing event, if you're good, you leak a little. If you're not, you leak a lot. But the second you start leaking, you lose the ability to grab that arm cleanly, to slide into that arm bar, to immobilize, to do the knee on chest. You got to grab cloth. You got to try. Yeah, it's a bitch. But yeah,
it becomes more challenging for sure. Right? Like we also don't want people to practice dying, right? So you don't need to practice dying. The universe is going to tell you when that happens. So also the other thing I'd like to add, I agree with everything you said, Michael. I'd also like to add, again, it doesn't really matter what weapon you're using other than a firearm, but any kind of melee weapon you're using, you also want to reduce their arc. So if I can go all the way back to here and stab you, good luck controlling this. But if I can start shortening this arc to where they can't get any momentum, whether it's a stick and I'm inside the arc, or whether it's the weapon and I stop the articulation of this huge gross motor skill, if I can shorten that, chaos is managed, control is easier. So if this is chaos, right, I can stab wherever I want. If I can start eliminating chaos lines and shorten their ability to use the tool, I'm going to be able to gain control much simpler.
Well said.
And Never confuse simple with easy.
Correct. Yes. This is not easy by any stretch of the imagination.
You are 100% correct. Excellent advice, Sensei. What do you normally call it? Instructor, Sensei, hey, you, yeah, you?
Yeah, whatever mouth noise gets my attention is my title. So, hey you, hey Randy, hey Guy, what's up? Hey Instructor Guy, it's fine.
Same thing.
I don't use honorifics, not because I think they're bad. They just don't work for what I do. I can't say, hey, you can stand up to anybody, but you have to bow to me. Does that make sense?
Right.
So
No,
in
100%.
but in self-defense, in martial arts, that's different for kids, for respect, for whatever. But because I'm primarily a self-defense coach, just a name, whatever you want to call me. So if you want to call me Instructor K, if you want to call me Sensei, if you want to call me Master, Guru, technically my title would be Guru, I guess. Guru Instructor. I don't know. Doesn't matter. Guru. Yeah. Wherever you're at, I don't care. Yeah.
Yeah. Right. Yeah, I don't like Sensei. Michael Sensei, there's a long story behind it, and a Japanese student who broke my heart in a good way. But in a good way, because I don't like it. I don't like Sensei. I always said Sensei and Shifu give the student the opportunity to be disingenuous, to give the student an opportunity to be a hypocrite, because you're not going to listen to everything I say. You're going to treat me like your priest. You're going to be smorgasbord with the martial arts, just like you're going to be smorgasbord with your religion.
Right.
But I had one Japanese student who used to call me Michael Sensei, and forever I would tell her, please, no, just Michael, please. And one day she's like, oh no, Michael Sensei, please don't take that away from me.
Yeah, exactly.
Okay, for you, that's cool.
Yeah, if it's more for them than for you, I don't think that's toxic at all, right? Instructor Thompson calls me Instructor King all the time. I don't correct him. If he wants to call me that because that's the respect he wants to show me, that's nothing wrong with that. As long as he doesn't turn his brain off when I talk. He's like, Instructor King said this. Yeah. That's the only part it becomes a problem, right?
I love and what you said is absolutely perfect. I can't expect them to be able to stand up to everybody but have to bow to me.
Yeah, I don't like that.
That's oxymoronic. Yeah.
Yeah, I agree.
Like as you say, self-defense shouldn't be behind a paywall.
Yep, nope, should not. Free courses everywhere, baby.
Yeah. That's awesome. Yeah, you still have those on your site, don't you? The two?
Of forever. And then I'm building a new one right now. You got the taste of the first video already, Instructor Thompson. But like I'm cutting that up sometime, whenever I have a minute, I'm cutting that up into an online course. So then people can access that. And then the way that I work it is I have a number that I have to make. So once it makes the money it needs to make, then I'm going to make it free also. That's how my model always is I put away, so all the money that I make, I put away a chunk of it into a special fund. When I reach a certain number, I do a free seminar and use that to pay my wage. So that way I'm not losing money, but I can still do like volunteer work, etc. Because I'm in this to help people. I'm not in this for the money. If I was in it for the money, I would have stayed in advertising. So when we're doing this, it's the same thing, right? Once the course makes X dollars, that's all I needed to make. That pays for my time, my effort, whatever, incentivizes me, and then bang, it's free.
Right. That's awesome. And no, we're not doing it for the money, but it's one of my, because I always used to.
You have to. This is my full-time job. Like, people, there's
if our doors are closed.
Yes, and not a lot of people do what I do. There's not a lot of people that this is their full-time gig is traveling and teaching. So unfortunately, money is a metric. It has to be, but I'm not looking for infinite growth. I'm not Amazon, right? I need a certain number, and then I'm happy, and then I can move on to the next project.
I think, I love what you said about this, especially money is always an interesting thing in the martial arts world, because you got people who, what was the story about that instructor that lived on, and I just default to instructor for everybody, but instructor who lived on the World, the yacht that was called the World. You remember?
Yes. That is, what's his name? It'll come to me later. The guy that founded the ATA. The guy that founded the American Taekwondo Association and MAIA, Martial Arts Industry Association, which was huge through the 90s.
Yeah, I've heard of both of those, yep.
Yeah, and they grew from 200 schools to 2,200 schools in less than a decade. And he lived on a yacht called the World. And the World is the largest yacht in the world, but you can't book passage on it. You have to buy a condo on it. It's kind of like a high-rise apartment in New York. And so you have to buy a condo on this, and it docks every so often. But there were, in Black Belt Magazine, there's one picture of him standing on the deck of the yacht in a gold lame gi with a fucking bell that had, I don't know, like spinning firecrackers or some shit on it. But look at the ATA. Look at the ATA. I kind of cringe. We have some colleagues that we respect and love very much, but they're ATA black belts, and so the cred is only ever with the lowercase c. They're so watered down, and yet they make so much money.
Yeah, well, that's much money. The problem is like selling things that look hard and making them easy is a great way to cash in, right?
It's huge. Yeah. There's the real issue with this when we look at anything for skill. We had this problem in Kempo too, because just doing my fourth degree, my requirements were to bring back other disciplines to teach my father. And so I did that, and I'm probably not even going to be doing like an announcement video or anything other than just saying this to you two. Majority of Kempo schools after 1990s started watering down the curriculum so much,
Yeah.
spread out, because it ended at third. I finished. The fourth
Right.
through 10th is listed as time served to teaching.
Yeah,
That's
makes
it.
sense.
And so you have a ceremony kind of thing. But so many of them spread it all the way up to 10th. And then, of course, there's now a billion 10th degrees in Kempo. And so everybody kind of took that black belt model of, we are a black belt school. We will sell
Yeah.
you the black belt, and the black belt will be able to. And I always looked at that and I was like, I could do pretty well at an orange belt. I could defend myself pretty well against everything around a brown belt from that skill. And then, like we talked about with the issues in Kempo, is after third, I had an understanding of, okay, what this all really is.
Yeah.
But I could defend myself just fine at that skill level. It wasn't until going into Filipino martial arts and there was no belts, and then there was really a lot less ego. Like the ego went from like here to like whoa down. And because nobody's walking around in kimonos and they're like that, and you know if it works if you get the stick knocked out of your hand in 2 seconds.
Yeah.
And it's like pretty proof positive of, okay, now we're going to do this. And, our sparring was kind of like that, but it's interesting because all the instructors I know that do the really good work about transferring skills, that's always what I feel like our job actually is. It's not about the belt or any of that. Is what can I give you that I am good at, that you can become good at, and I can make you good at it, and hopefully better than me. And that is where we kind of need to be taking that to people. And I have no idea how long that's going to take, because like all teachers, I'm not sure how many people are going to go home and do their homework. So
Right, exactly.
Take you a couple of years, yeah. It could take you 10, sure. I don't know. It could take you 6 months if you drill it out for 10 hours a day every single day.
Yeah.
But these are interesting things with this, and so I know you guys both did this with Filipino martial arts as well. And I know Randy, you're also a 4th degree there in Taekwondo, right? And so I mean,
no, I'm only a 1st degree in Taekwondo. I'm a 4th degree in Modern Art East. Our system did have belts, but very important to understand that Kano is the reason that belts exist, right? Kano from judo created belts.
Yes.
He stole that idea from swimming. So these are swimming belts, everybody. You have swimming lesson belts on you, number one. And the belts are an indicator, so Kano knew who he could grab for a demo that he wouldn't murder with a throw. We've all of a sudden made the indicator the goal. That's not okay.
Yeah, that's exactly
right?
No, that's horrible.
Yeah.
It's the worst.
Yeah, I've got a colleague of mine who was also going for his 4th at the same time, and I know he was making an announcement video, and of course I congratulated him. You've got to go put in the work for it and everything.
Yeah, of course.
And I just kind of was like, I think I'm just gonna add a stripe and not do a video, because it's really not a. I teach like this all the time anyway. Like you'll see me in when I'm doing some Kempo stuff, I will put on the what is it? I like what Michael said, the full battle regalia, because I got all the patches and stuff. And I like it, but I always liken it to cosplay. And I'm not just on cosplay. I like to go to cosplay conventions with my daughter. It's cool. I enjoy it, and there is a certain level of respect culture in the martial arts that I enjoy too.
Right.
It's kind of cosplay. I can't even go out in my rank. Like they told us as soon as we were getting into upper ranks, they're like, you can't go out in your belt. You're going to be intimidating people. You can't do that at all. So we can go out in the fabric of the kimono and no belt. And then it just kind of felt like, okay, I appreciate
hilarious. How self-aggrandizing is Kenpo, no offense, that they think that everybody knows what your belt means. Like the whole world's gonna be like, oh, he's so dangerous. They're gonna be like, that's what a nice outfit. They're gonna ignore you. That's so amazing to me.
They're going to think you're really crazy. Yeah. That's what I meant with the watered down. It's insane. I know some lineages that have 3rd degree black belt at less than 100 techniques. This was 250 at 3rd, and that was the original 24 curriculum from Parker. But there's so many different versions of this, and it doesn't mean I have no idea. Depending on their lineage, they could have 60 techniques, and that's it. They could have 250, and there's no standardization. But that's across the board of all martial arts. I know some.
Yes, correct.
In Jimmy Woo's Kung Fu San Tzu, it was you gained a rank in black belt for every year you were a black belt. So essentially, if you were a black belt for 10 years, you were a 10th degree black belt. And he set this up himself. It's insane. That's like you said. It became the goal became the rank. To the point where when I had my commercial studio, I had kids whose parents were in there specifically to get them a black belt as part, and then leave as soon as they got it, because that was part of their college prep. That was part of their resume, as they were applying for colleges. It's insane, but it's a deep tradition. When you were talking, it reminded me the black belt program. When I was 12, 13, my Kung Fu studio shut down. And so my dad's taking me everywhere to look for a new studio. We went everywhere. And we ended up at Chuck Norris Studio in Torrance. Cool. And we watched the program. We went through the sales pitch. It was amazing. It was slick as fuck. And then we went in the back and they told us about the programs. And they said, it's this much a month, it's this much for a year. And then we have the black belt program. And for this much money, you're guaranteed your black belt. It's a 4-year program. But if you take longer, you don't pay any more money for as long as it takes you to get your black belt. And on the way home, I remember my dad saying, let me ask you something. If after 4 years, you're really not ready, and after 5 years, you're really not ready, at what point do you think they're going to just want to make room for another student that's paying and just give you your
exactly right.
Yeah.
in my mind. Yeah, it's a terrible idea. It's a terrible idea. I don't even think. Honestly, my studio was only successful because we followed the ATA and Maya's business plan for testing, birthday parties, summer camps, sleepovers,
Oh
all
yeah.
that stuff.
Right on.
But that's a terrible thing. Testing is a terrible thing.
Right.
The way I would do it from this point forward is when they're ready, I'd walk up and hand them a bell. They'd
Yep.
have no advance notice. There would be no, you're getting ready for a ceremony. It says at one point, one day, I would just say, congratulations, here you go.
There's an argument for the crucible of it, but I agree with you as well, right? Like,
The Crucible was okay. My first black belt was Kyokushin.
yeah. Oh, okay. See, that's a legit. Okay, Kyokushin. They don't mess around.
There is something to say about the gauntlet. Yes.
Yeah,
yes,
there
they
is.
do put you through. Yeah.
Right.
That's
I think it's good to feel like you earned it. I think it's good to have a ceremony, like not a ceremony like it's a graduation, but like
Right.
there is something to be said about like I sweated all day, I worked, and I earned this. But it only works if people can fail. If people can't fail, then it's pointless,
Yes.
right?
That's a huge
100%.
part of it. You know, because we did the original Parker, we had an 8-hour physical test. I had 3 written tests and a verbal, but I also had to do the 1-on-1, 2-on-1, 3-on-1, and 5-on-1 fight. And they said the point is so you walk out with a sense of humility. And then I learned what punch drunk was. But I was like, so I'm kind of a badass, but I'm not a badass because these guys just kicked my ass all up and down that floor. And I think
exactly
you don't
what
need
I
any of that. You can go to any MMA school now and do it in shorts, and they'll give you what you want.
Yeah.
You know.
Yeah.
Give you what you want. And looking back in retrospect, that was kind of like the first pressure testing. Yeah, we sparred hard, but that test was the first time that I felt like I wasn't going to get no mercy.
Right.
Yeah. I like that.
Those are indeed.
Okay, Instructor King.
Yes, sir.
One thing that Paul, our buddy, he always asks this question on his podcast, and you got to be on his podcast, and you got to pimp your book because your book it's a standard.
Thank you so much.
We're gonna have a list. No, thank you so much because
okay.
I'm kind. I'm observant. And when we're looking at our website and looking at required reading, should read, and read it if you got the time.
Yeah.
Your book is required reading if anybody's serious about management of violence, or what the vernacular, self-defense.
Sure,
You use the vernacular, self-defense.
Yep.
But really, it's about understanding violence before it ever happens and managing it once it does, and surviving that psychological aftermath afterwards. Nobody. I hope you're right that your book's killing it right now, and I hope
I think it is
to kill it. It's going to start because it is required reading. I always tell people, a couple books that are required reading. If you really for real want to manage violence, Jack Dempsey's book,
Championship Fighting. Oh, so dope.
Oh, so dope. Such a great book. Necessary. And so is yours. Your book.
Oh, thanks, man. I'm going to keep saying thank you because I'm Canadian and I have to. It's part of our culture.
That's fine.
But I do appreciate it.
I appreciate it. It's insane. But on that note, back to Paul's question. We know we're crazy. We know we have the 10% that we're going to go home. How do you put that in somebody that just comes into the dojo? Somebody just doesn't have that. How do you instill in the average human that mentality?
It's different for everybody. So this is why personal value is the #1 pillar, right? If they don't believe they're worth defending, they're not going to defend themselves. I've seen this time and time again. So one of the ways you can do that is either A, you have to convince them they're worth defending, super hard uphill battle, or you have to invoke somebody they care about more than themselves in order to get that reaction. But then you have to pull it back and say, how come they get that, but you don't, right? So, example, mums and kids are a really good example. My mom always I would never fight back if somebody hurt you. I would do this, this, and this, right? You have to invoke that and use that talisman or that power or that totem or whatever you want to get them to think in a manner of, somebody went silent. I think Michael. Okay, there we go. Yeah. So you have to get them to think in a manner of what I would do for somebody else, and then you have to flip it for them, and that takes time. So that's why I think personal value is so important. But if you have a pet or a sister or a cousin or uncle or a grandma or a kid or a best friend, a lot of people are willing to do third-party violence for protection over defending themselves. So you can invoke that and then flip it of how come not you? That tends to work the best for me.
That's very good.
That's outstanding. Yeah.
Thank you.
That is a whole other thing that we need to dive into at some point. Why? Why can't people believe? Yeah. I'll tell this story. I had a student who was a black belt under Richard Kim, and he was telling me a story, and Chris knows the story, of one of their other black belts. It was a woman. She was in her 40s, and during one of their black belt classes, she had confided to the group that she had been raped. And the situation was at that moment when she felt she could have implemented, and Richard Kim was one of the pioneers of karate from back in the 70s. And he was very much into devastating, catastrophic retaliation.
Yeah.
But she said she looked into his eyes and she saw her son, and
Right.
she just couldn't bring herself. I was infuriated. I thought, no, you would. She thinks the guy's immediately going to obviously the light, and she's going to be the last person he ever raped. She gave him license to continue violating people. Now I know that was just me being angry.
Yeah, yeah, for sure it was. Yep.
Talk.
Thoughts
Say
on that?
something about that.
Yeah, I think we're going to use Tammy Arbor-Crack as you can't survive wrong, right? Self-defense is a micro problem, not a macro problem. Her stopping her rape is all she had to do. It's not her job or her responsibility to stop other crimes from happening, right? If it was a macro solve, that's different, but self-defense is unfortunately very micro. It's very you and personally you. So I would say she did a good job. Obviously, if you could report, you should report, but we don't get to decide how trauma affects people by any stretch of the imagination. So yes, I agree with you, like ethically and morally, but on the ground operational level, I just don't see that as functional for some people.
I guess, but she allowed herself to be raped.
And that's okay, because maybe that was the right choice. We don't know the context. Maybe there was a knife. Maybe she thought this was the best thing I could do to survive. You can't survive wrong, right? So we don't get to take away people's authority of their own actions.
Right.
If she decided that this was the right call, then that was the right call. That's where I stand on it, at least.
Right, right. I guess where I had my problem was her reasoning was the rapist reminded of her son.
Yeah, it's very interesting.
Catastrophic injury.
Right.
Yeah, that is a problem for psychologists. That's above our pay grade, guys. That is not for that damage is not for us.
It's so hard with people who have things happen, and especially because they'll go through the self-doubt, they'll go through the in your mind a million times, and
Yes.
this is why I think a lot of the self-empowerment is the pillar that really needs to be focused on. And at 500 Rising does excellent work with that. There's a few people who just do this really well when you're building that part up. I don't see a whole lot of that in martial arts. It's kind of like almost a given, like it's supposed to, because it's going to raise self-esteem, but that's very different than having the actual training of raising that up in yourself and becoming empowered kind of a way.
I think what we have to realize that everybody's starting the race from a different starting point, right? If you take your average kid and you put them in martial arts, they're going to get all the confidence they need. A regular kid from a regular house where nothing bad has happened, where there's no abuse or so anything, but not everybody gets to start at that starting line, right? And this is what I was kind of trying to allude to, but I'm going to really say it blunt here is you have to say something's above your pay grade. There are students who have come to me who are just so damaged. I'm like, look, all the kicking and punching in the world isn't going to fix what you need to get fixed. You need to go talk to this person. You need to see some, because you're a groomed victim. You're a people pleaser. You're a person that's like, you don't. The best way I articulate it, I've been quoting Rory a lot, not citing him. So Rory, this is another Roryism, but if you keep bringing the bricks of your, this isn't Rory quite, but if you keep bringing the bricks of your past to your future, you're going to end up building the same house. Right. So most people tend to only go to the place they're comfortable with. If you're comfortable with being abused and that's what you're used to, you're going to keep seeking that out because it's the easiest way for you to survive. There is no key all loud enough that's going to shake that out of your brain. You need to talk to somebody else. Martial arts can be part of your healing journey. It can be a step to build physical authority, to learn how to say no, but there's a psychological component that just martial arts cannot do and should not do.
Right. That's very well said. On the other side of that, and I can tell you especially, I see quite a few of those things happening when we're going and talking about that with firearms. A lot of people will start to look at that for the empowerment of, now I've got a gun and I feel strong and I feel powerful. This is one of the reasons why your work's really important. And I totally agree. You should be talking to a psychologist if you've had experiences where you're in trauma, and that's because those are repetitive things that you're going to need a lot of time with them. But part of that, especially going into firearms, a lot of victims will end up going and getting a gun because it immediately makes them feel powerful and tough.
Sure.
I like this what Michael's saying about that too, though, is he always says, the biggest gun in the world isn't going to save you if you can't squeeze that trigger. And so this is one of the reasons why we wanted to include a lot of what you do there and specifically talk to you about this in the book, because that whole thing could happen again, even if you have your weapon on you, if you're not willing to take it out and actually go to violence and the highest level of violence. And
correct.
This is one of the things I love having this conversation with both of you. I'll tell you, because Instructor King, you once said this to me. You said a lot of places in martial arts just don't go here because it's just too messy. But there are excellent conversations to have because this is the real world. This is what happens to people. This is how adults.
You're never going to get a commercial dojo successful if you're talking about this shit.
Guess what?
It's too dirty. You've got to protect their fantasy.
Yeah.
No, exactly. That's the problem, right? People want to believe in magic. I can't stress that enough. People want to believe in magic.
Yeah. No, I don't know if we'd have a dojo in that way. I think it'd have to be a shooting range, but we might be able to pull it off there. I'm okay. Now that
there's some Krav Maga gyms doing a really good job of this. There are some other places, but they're more like an art, they're a system, if that makes sense. Like they're like a combative system or a CQC system or something that draws from all the arts, but they add the psychological on. I'm very lucky, like not lucky, but like this is becoming more the forefront of a lot of people. I've been having these conversations for 20 years, right? Like pre-book, I've been talking this exact same thing, not as eloquently, but I've been saying the same stuff. And now that conversation is a lot more common. I'm no longer like the crazy man screaming from the rooftop. A lot of other people are starting to pick this up, and I hope the book expands that conversation.
Yeah.
Well, one thing it may do is reclaim the term self-defense for people like you, because it's a platitude. It's become a platitude. And
I agree.
That's why the reason I stopped using it is because of that.
Absolutely.
I say management of violence management, but unsanctioned bout as opposed to street fight.
Yes, I agree. I like that.
But the way you use the term self-defense and the way you lean into it is reclaim it, brother. Get it back to a place where it is, because that was one of the first things I noticed was the credibility you bring to the term. The credibility you bring to the term, and that's important. We can use it again. Thank you guys like you.
Indeed, awesome. I think that's a huge point, and it really, this is one of the reasons why we wanted to include it in Prime, and why I think shooters need to be seeing these things. And that between what you both just talked about right there, this is, the gun's an inanimate object. It's you. You're the one. You have to become the one. And it's not like Highlander can't only be one. There can be many, but you have to be you have to be able to become that version of you. I always like that in the conversations when they talk about alter ego. We talk about Batman and what would the version of you who would be successful in this arena do. People have a nice ability to kind of look through and see. It's excellent talking with both of you. I very much should have it again where we circle back with you, because I always want to hear your thoughts on.
And anytime you want, guys, I enjoy talking to you as well. Keep me any way you want me involved in your projects. I love what you're doing. I think you're asking the right questions. If I could have 5 Instructor Thompsons in my pocket, I'd be very, very happy. Like, you guys are doing so much work helping and getting this stuff out there. I can't. You're doing the right thing. I think I'm on board. So whenever you need.
Try to earn that, my friend.
Good. I'm glad to hear.
As much as we can, we'll put a link to your site on the website. If you have a direct link to Amazon or where your book can be purchased, we'll put that there. It's on our book list. I know Chris is right on that. Looking forward to buying you lunch sometime, my friend.
Indeed.
So that would be great. Anytime you guys want to talk, I'm down.
Awesome.
Talk to you soon, okay?
Thanks so much.
Have a great rest of your day.
See you later, you too. Bye.